It's me, that gal who put the ghoul in the goulash. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Now, for those of you looking to improve your drab, dreary looks, you can rest easy knowing that you don't have to waste thousands of dollars on painful plastic surgery to get people to like you. Instead, you can invest thousands of dollars on latex rubber monster masks. That's right, hand-painted and covered with genuine synthetic hair. These over-the-head little beauties are guaranteed to make you the toast of any Halloween party. Or, after your spouse finds out how much you spent on something that rots away in a few years, the defendant in a divorce settlement. For nearly 100 years, monsters have crawled out of their crypts, tombs, and graves to thrill and chill moviegoers. And one company has literally brought the creatures of the night face to face with horror film fans. Dawn Post Studios. Located in Glendale, California, the Dawn Post Studios has long been a mecca for monster makers and monster fans. After starting the company in 1939, Dawn Post became the first manufacturer of rubber masks in the United States. His early line included an assortment of animals, clowns, and other humorous characters. But in 1948, Dawn Post made a business decision that would impact the direction his company would take for decades to come.
My dad went to Universal Studios and worked out a deal for a licensing agreement to make a Frankenstein mask. That mask was made for 25 years.
Modeled after the likeness of Glenn Strange, who played the monster in the last 3 of Universal's now classic Frankenstein films, the mask became a huge hit with fright fans of all ages.
I went over to Bruce's haunted house over in Glendale, and the guy hands me this beautiful box, this nice cardboard box. And it's pretty small. I'm thinking, a mask is in there? It's kind of weird. And I opened it, and of course, it pops right out, and there it is, you know. But this wonderful box art and thing for it, everything. And I thought, wow, this is too cool. And I put that mask on. I literally put it on, and I wore that with my bicycle riding home, and I got honks and people yelling. It was fun.
Dawn Post was now the first official licensee of any Universal Studios monster. And it was only a matter of time before other Hollywood dream factories came knocking on his door.
One thing Don did, most people don't know, he did a head of Alfred Hitchcock for one of the Hitchcock shows, and it looked exactly like Alfred Hitchcock. But of all the stuff he did, I think the thing he's most remembered for was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original film. He did the big pods, which were wonderful. He did the bodies when they came out of the pods and were forming. Not only did he did the forming bodies, but he did the finished bodies with hair and everything else.
But even though Dawn was now a successful Hollywood prop maker, he didn't stop releasing his signature line of horror-themed masks. In 1963, Dawn joined forces with a young mask maker named Vern Langdon, and together they literally changed the face of horror.
When I came along, it was very easy. I pretty much had carte blanche, so I could put out just about anything I wanted, and I put out everything I wanted.
With his enthusiasm and his love for monsters and everything, he helped take things to in a little bit different direction and to another level.
Working together, Post and Langdon gave birth to a new line of latex masks and christened them the Hollywood Horrors. This line of false faces recreated such famous monsters as the Phantom of the Opera, the Mummy, Mr. Hyde, Dracula, and of course, Frankenstein's monster. Unfortunately, due to the instability of the latex used to make the mask, virtually none of these infamous faces exist today. This Dracula mask may be the sole survivor of Dawn Post's golden age of ghoul masks. Although time has taken its toll on this fearsome vampire, any fan can still appreciate the sculptor's attention to detail. In 1964, Universal Studios asked the company to create latex versions of their first family of fright, the Munsters. The movie studio was so pleased with Post's efforts that they renewed the mask maker's license for their classic monsters. The Hollywood horrors were retooled and eventually transformed into the newly rechristened Universal Horrors. With the help of talented sculptors Pat Newman, Dawn and Vern reimagined their original cast of creatures. They created a deluxe series of masks that are as famous today as the movies that inspired them. Much of that fame was due to a series of ads in the pages of famous monsters of Filmland magazine. Boasting lifelike realism and genuine artificial hair, these masks came complete with optional claws and a monstrous price tag of nearly $40. Considering that the average kid's allowance in those days was 25 cents a week, it's no small wonder that the closest many FM readers came to owning the mask was in the form of photographs that illustrated a one-shot calendar issued in 1965. Don Post and Vern Langdon also continued to alter and improve their mask line to meet the ever-changing demands of their customers. In 1968, readers of Famous Monster magazine were introduced to yet another series of monster masks. This 800 line offered over-the-head masks at a third of the price of the Universal Horrors. Even with their sculpted hair and less detailed paint jobs, these masks remain highly collectible. It was around that time Don Post Jr. stepped in to join his father and helped develop an even broader range of monster masks than ever before. This trio of bell ringers from The Hunchback of Notre Dame really did strike a chord with Post customers in the 1970s. Using the likeness of actor Rondo Hatton, this Mongo mask was popular at many a Halloween bash. Dracula rose again from his grave in this more generic and unlicensed version of the fearless vampire. When Ape Mania hit the country in the 1970s, Post Studios offered this beautifully detailed series of masks which showcased the simian stars from Planet of the Apes. These popular creatures from Star Wars flew off of store shelves faster than you could say Luke Skywalker. And speaking of stars, this Captain Kirk mask became an icon with horror fans when it was repainted and used as the eerie disguise worn by serial killer Michael Myers in the low-budget slasher smash Halloween. Sadly, on November 17th, 1979, Don Post Sr. passed away, leaving his son to carry on the company's impressive legacy. Acknowledging the fact that the masks made by the company were now being prized as cherished works of art, Post Studios licensed the rights to create this impressive mask and hands from the 1979 remake of Nosferatu. Complete with a certificate of authenticity and this plexiglass case, this impressive likeness of Klaus Kinski in the title role went for a whopping $350. Remarkably, it is now worth over $2,000 to any collector lucky enough to find one. In 1982, the Halloween film franchise continued with Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch. The producers approached Dawn Post Studios to create the movie's main props. 3 killer masks that would explode on their owners' heads on Halloween night. Of course, Post also released copies of the masks to monster fans that same year. But don't worry, even though the masks did come with the film's silver shamrock insignia, they were missing the exploding microchip. 1990 saw the release of these incredibly accurate gremlins from the Warner Brothers film Gremlins 2. To ensure that the likenesses would be as accurate as possible, Post hired one of the film's creature sculptors to recreate these little devils. Throughout the years, Dawn Post Studios has offered a gallery of ghouls that would be the envy of many a trick-or-treater. But what was Dawn Post's best-selling mask of all time? Believe it or not, it was this latex likeness of Swedish wrestler-turned-actor, Tor Johnson. Tor Johnson was a regular face in a string of no-budget movies in the 1950s. But even Criswell couldn't have predicted the incredible popularity the actor continues to enjoy as a genuine horror icon. To many horror fans around the globe, the name Dawn Post is as famous as the monsters he created.
Where there are no Dawn Post, there would be no rubber masks as we know them today. I firmly believe that. He was to masks what Walt Disney was to animation.
Hey, whoever said looks aren't everything? It's me, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, here to tell you all about the joys of a good wax job. No, not that kind of wax job. The kind of wax that produces incredible results without a lot of pain and agony. Still can't get your puny little minds out of the intellectual trash heap, huh? Well, for those of you who can't wait to see more glassy eyes than there are in your local tavern, get ready to come face to face with some real candle power. The weird, wonderful world of monsters in wax. If a close encounter of a ghoulish kind is what you crave, then look no further than your nearest neighborhood wax museum. There, enterprising monster fans can feast their eyes and glut their souls on a fiendish assortment of morbid mannequins. And who can we credit with creating this fearsome phenomenon? Why, none other than a young female artist and sculptor who lived in 18th century France, Marie Tussaud. Of course, Marie was no stranger to horror. During the bloody French Revolution, she was forced to make molds from the severed heads of France's royal family. Particularly gruesome was the fact that Marie had sculpted wax portraits of King Louis and his wife, Marie Antoinette, in happier times. Now, their disembodied effigies were being paraded around the streets of Paris in a perverse show of anarchy and violence. By the 1800s, Marie had fled her war-torn homeland and settled in London, England. After establishing a showcase for her impressive collection of wax portraits, Marie and her heirs found that visitors were equally eager to view her authentic guillotine blade. And the Wax Museum's growing lineup of dead celebrities and executed criminals. Dubbed the Chamber of Horrors, the eerie exhibit exhibit became all the rage among London's elite. It wasn't long until Madame Tussauds competitors followed her lead. By the late 1800s, nearly every other wax museum contained its own version of the Chamber of Horrors. In more modern times, movie monsters took the place of mass murderers as the featured attraction of most wax museums. There, an assortment of Frankensteins, Draculas, Wolfmen, and mummies could be viewed in all their three-dimensional splendor, courtesy of some paraffin wax, a few glass eyes, some hair, and a suitable costume. Meet one of America's leading wax sculptors, Henry Alvarez. At his studio in Long Beach, California, Henry creates some of the most impressive examples of wax art ever sculpted.
Wax figures are important in the sense that they are three-dimensional. They will outlast photographs and paintings. You get a better depiction of the individual being portrayed, and the artist is incorporating his feelings of what that person's personality is like.
Over the decades, Henry and his colleagues have created countless wax monsters. Oliver Reed played the fearsome lycanthrope in The Curse of the Werewolf. Known as the Man of 1,000 Faces, Lon Chaney played many monsters, like the grinning top-hatted vampire in London After Midnight. The rarest head in Henry's collection is this wax portrait of Frankenstein's monster, as played by Boris Karloff. Sculpted by the mother of Henry's mentor, Catherine Stuberg, this eerie effigy appeared in various wax museums over the years. Its place in horror history was ensured by the fact that it was a personal favorite of Frankenstein's real-life makeup man, Jack Pierce. Although the cast of characters in wax museums continues to change, the process of making a wax figure has stayed pretty much the same since the time of Madame Tussauds. The artist begins working in clay using drawings, photographs, or other research materials to help create the most accurate likeness. When the sculpture is finished, the head is molded in plaster. The clay is removed and the mold is cleaned and prepped for the wax. The wax is heated to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. Henry's wax blend is a trade secret handed down to him by Stuberg Studios. When the wax is ready, the molds for the head and hands are filled and left to cure for about an hour. When the wax hardens, each piece is carefully removed from the molds. The wax sculpture is then cleaned up and readied for hair insertion. Each hair is added by hand, strand by strand. Although this tedious process can take 2 weeks or more to complete, the effect is amazing as the hair literally seems to grow out of the head. Next to be inserted are the eyes. After researching and selecting the proper color, Henry's wife Andrea carefully places the eyes in the head. Once they're positioned and secured, the interior of the head is lined with cotton and wax to give it strength. Then it's sealed. While the various artists work on the head and hands, Henry and his crew are busy fabricating the body. Once the body is finished, the head and hands are fitted. Then, the head goes to the paint department. Andrea usually spends a week on each head. Her technique is another trade secret, and with results like this, you can understand why. Finally, the figure is costumed and ready for its unveiling. Here, at last, is the finished figure of Dracula, as played by Bela Lugosi in Universal's 1931 classic. Whoa, talk about lifelike. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the children of the night. Built in 1962, the Movieland Wax Museum in Buena Park, California is one place that has always taken its monsters seriously. At one time, lucky guests even had a chance to pose with one of the stars of the museum. Talk about tall, dark, and gruesome. At Movieland, fans and would-be fiends can meet their favorite movie monsters face to furry face. Here's the Wolfman as played by Lon Chaney Jr. in the 1941 feature film. Move around the corner and encounter the Frankenstein monster. Boris Karloff himself visited this museum and, upon seeing his famous character recreated in wax, remarked that the monster was the best friend he ever had. Next is Lon Chaney as Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, and Mary Philbin as Christine, the singer that Eric is literally crazy about. Here's Movieland's version of Bela Lugosi as Dracula. The female object of his undead desires is actress Helen Chandler, who's about to be given a real pain in the neck. Now we go from gothic to gross out, as Leatherface stands ready with his trusty chainsaw in this chilling homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The low-budget movie, directed by Tobe Hooper, spawned 2 sequels and a remake. Talk about making a killing! Now here's a psycho for you. Anthony Perkins stands ready to say, "Come to mama," in this scene from Psycho 3. The Exorcist broke box office records when it was released in 1973. Here, Movieland turns audiences' heads with its own version of Linda Blair's devilishly deadly character. Finally, we come upon the insane wax sculptor Henry Jared from Warner Brothers' 3D horror extravaganza, House of Wax. In this setting inspired by the film, Vincent Price prepares his victim for the kind of waxing you can't get at the beauty parlor. Price was another star that loved to visit Movieland Wax Museum. Occasionally, he would lurk in the shadows near this exhibit and, when visitors least expected it, he'd leap out and yell, "Boo!" From serial killers to screen superstars, And from disembodied heads to the king of the undead, audiences can always get an up-close and personal look at the masters of the macabre by taking a trip to their favorite wax museum. Come anytime. They're dying to see you. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark here. You know, over the last few years, I've starred in quite a few movies you've probably seen. Well, except for a couple that can't be shown outside of Transylvania. Anyway, I guess you could say I'm something of a cult item on the big screen, which is something I have in common with the subject of our next story. His name is Paul Blaisdell, and he's one of the great unsung heroes of 1950s monster movies. During the 1950s, moviegoers across America found themselves under attack by an onslaught of aliens and creepy creatures brought to life by one remarkable man, monster maker Paul Blaisdell. Invasion of the Saucermen. It conquered the world. And the She-Creature are just a few of the classic B-movie chillers boasting Paul Blaisdell's striking creations. But the story of this influential father of fright doesn't begin on movie screens. Blaisdell first showed a flair for fantasy by illustrating sci-fi pulp magazines in Los Angeles, where Paul settled with his loyal wife, Jackie. An early fan of Blaisdell's blazing talent was Forrest J. Ackerman, future editor of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine.
Roger Corman called me and he said, I'm going to make a film. Who could you recommend to create the beast for me? I said, well, I think Ray Harryhouse. And he said, oh my God, that man charges $10,000 a tentacle. I couldn't afford him. So I thought of a friend who was kind of an all-around genius. He'd never made a monster, but I thought he could surely do it.
In 1956, Blaisdell signed on for his first creature feature, The Beast with a Million Eyes, directed by the prince of low-budget shockers, Roger Corman. With barely $1 million cents in the budget, Paul was hired to bring beastly life to the million-eyed monster's alien slave. To get more bang for his limited buck, Blaisdell built his creation in miniature. The result was a puppet that Paul affectionately nicknamed Herkimer. Sadly, this wax pull from the original puppet is all that survives today from Paul's freshman foray into movie horror. The Beast with a Million Eyes turned Paul Blaisdell into the go-to monster guy for the movie's fledgling makers, the AIP Film Company. Paul's second Roger Corman shockfest, The Day the World Ended, challenged Blaisdell to create a monster mutant. The artist glued foam rubber over a pair of long johns, adding layer on top of layer for a costume that Blaisdell himself wore in the finished film. With fatherly pride, Paul christened his latest creation, Marty the Mutant. By the mid-1950s, Paul Blaisdell was scaring up his own group of admirers, like a young horror devotee named Bob Burns. Burns' passion for monster making and movie history so impressed his mentor that Paul made Bob his assistant. Blaisdell's creation for 1957's Invasion of the Saucermen succeeded beyond their wildest nightmares. In fact, Paul's original design for the movie's bug-eyed aliens went too far for the film's director, Eddie Kahn.
They were big-brained heads. Now, it shot all the stills, so most of the stills you see are the big heads. And suddenly they said, those heads are too big, you gotta cut them down. Paul said, what do you mean cut them down? He said, well, we've got to shoot tomorrow. You got to cut them down. He said, okay.
Fortunately, the Saucermen's planetary invasion didn't pan out the way those pesky aliens had planned. But here on Earth, we still have one precious souvenir of their visit. Behold, the original Saucerman head, as worn in the film by Bob Burns. On Invasion of the Saucermen, Paul Blaisdell did more than invent a race of otherworldly invaders. He also designed their snazzy spaceship. This miniature intergalactic hot rod was carved by Paul out of white pine and powered by a battery-operated directional indicator. But invading Saucermen were just a warm-up for Paul's next big challenge. Hollywood's first full-sized female monster suit for the 1957 hit, The She-Creature. Once again, Paul inhabited his own foam rubber costume to play this scintillating she-devil, who became one of the artist's most indelible horror icons. Sadly, no piece of the original She-Creature suit still exists, but thanks to the incredible talents of sculptor Kathy Tharp, we can once again gaze on this freaky femme fatale. But the She-Creature wasn't Blaisdell's only female purveyor of fright. Meet Beulah, the ultimate it girl, and star of Roger Corman's It Conquered the World.
But it was really a pretty non-human form in sort of a bell-shaped creature with little teeny feet, legs that could move around on a big, humongous arms.
Beulah was another Blaisdell masterpiece of foam, constructed by Paul over a wooden base. Paul was also responsible for creating Beulah's freaky flying mind-control creatures. Blaisdell and Burns spent countless hours testing the flying rig at Paul's mountainside retreat. This last surviving mind-control creature may not seem so frightening today, with its marble eyes and penny arcade teeth. But immortalized on film, it can still send movie audiences ducking for cover. In The Ghost of Dragstrip Hollow, Paul even spoofed himself, playing a frustrated effects man trying to scare off a group of teenagers, in this live-action forerunner of the Scooby-Doo formula. Paul Blaisdell took his final trip into cinematic outer space in the 1958 sci-fi drama It, The Terror from Beyond Space. Thanks to a bigger-than-usual budget, Paul decided to sculpt his alien head in clay and create a mask. He also sculpted a series of body armor plates for the suit. Unfortunately for movie buffs, It, The Terror from Beyond Space, marked the movie's swan song for Paul Blaisdell. Fed up with tight budgets and constant production problems, Paul decided it was time to go MIA from AIP and its ilk and tackle fresh challenges outside Hollywood. In 1962, the artist and his devoted assistant Bob Burns decided to publish their very own magazine. The result was Fantastic Monsters, a title no doubt inspired by the success of Forey Ackerman's famous Monsters magazine. But Bob and Paul wanted to offer readers even more, and decided to make films and slides of Paul's creations available to readers.
Paul came up with the idea of a set of slides. Actually 5 sets of slides, you might say. They're in a sleeve and all this kind of stuff, and all the slides are there. I think it sold for like $1. I mean, we didn't make any money on it, but we didn't care.
The dynamic duo decided to push the envelope even further by making their own movie and offering it for sale in the magazine.
Paul said, I always had this idea of doing an original little film with a creature that he had thought about for years called the Cliff Monster. And he built this little puppet, and he could get inside of it and actually kind of puppeteer it for close-up.
But in 1963, Blaisdell and Burns' ambitious dreams literally went up in smoke due to a fire that brought their unique foray into publishing to a blazing end.
The magazine went belly up really quick at that point. I mean, where could we go? We had no publisher, we had nothing.
After the tragic fire, Paul and his wife Jackie became increasingly reclusive. But if Paul Blaisdell put Hollywood and monsters behind him, his landmark creature creations refused to die. The movies he contributed so much to found new life through endless reruns on television. In fact, a whole new generation has come face to face with Paul's movie monster signature, the Blaisdell Scowl.
He always wanted to give, sort of a monster expression to these things. And it just became known as the Blaisdell Scowl because every monster he ever did, that part right in here, you're always going to recognize no matter what. That was his style, that was his trademark.
Sadly, Paul Blaisdell didn't live to see his characters achieve lasting immortality. Stomach cancer claimed the one-of-a-kind artist in 1983. But 2 decades after his passing, Paul's vision and ingenuity still inspire countless fans who've paid homage through model kits and toys.
He didn't have the crew, he didn't have any of that type of stuff. His was just a mom and pop operation, and it was amazing to watch this guy work. He was a brilliant artist.
Elvira, Mistress of the Dark here. Now, I gotta admit, I've always been a sucker for the tall, dark, and hairy type. Which is why I've got a soft spot for one of the biggest leading men in Hollywood, King Kong. Hey, look, I know the guy has a thing for blondes, but that's just because he never met the right brunette. And I know I'm not the only one who goes a little ape for the big fella. Check out some of these King Kong collectibles. They definitely put the monkey in monkey business. In 1933, RKO Radio Pictures unleashed an epic of enormous proportions, the eighth wonder of the world, King Kong. Over 70 years later, this classic tale of beauty and a giant-sized beast still ranks as one of the screen's all-time great adventures. Moviegoers to this day marvel at the sight of Kong and his prehistoric co-stars. But as gigantic as he appeared on screen, Kong was actually an 18-inch model, sculpted by Marcel Delgado, then brought to life one frame at a time by legendary animator Willis O'Brien. In fact, Delgado sculpted 2 Kongs for O'Brien to animate, each consisting of a steel armature, rubber skin, and a rabbit fur hide. Though it's hard to believe, no one gave a second thought to preserving these great apes once filming was completed. According to Delgado, one of the Kongs was torn to pieces, its parts used to build other miniature creatures. And as far as anyone knows, this left foot is all that remains of that particular Kong. The rubber has rotted away with time, exposing the bendable wire used to pose Kong's toes. So what was the fate of the other Kong? Amazingly, his metal skeleton lives on, in practically as good a shape as the day it wandered the jungles of Skull Island. Weighing almost 5 pounds of solid steel, Kong's armature is composed of adjustable ball and socket joints. O'Brien meticulously moved Kong in tiny increments, exposing just 1 frame of film per pose. As for Kong's head, it was first carved in wood, then, through a process called sand casting, was pressed into a mold. Molten metal was poured into the mold, and the resulting steel skull was cast. The reason this Kong survived is because he was called back into action for the film's inevitable sequel. That same year of 1933, this king was transformed into the son of Kong, hitting the big screen once more as his own white-furred offspring. Today, this amazing relic makes its home in the private museum of film historian and King Kong fan, Bob Burns.
Every time I see the film, I get a thrill out of it. Of just knowing everything's going to happen, but it doesn't matter. Just watching the technical aspects of that.
When the Kong armature was presumed lost forever, Bob found it and helped return it to its rightful owner, visual effects artist Phil Kellison. But Burns never expected the reward he'd receive.
He said, I'm giving them to you. I want you to have it. And when I put my chin off the floor, because I was in a total state of shock, I never thought that would ever happen. You know, he said, you'll take care of it, more people to see it at your place and never my place. And he said, I want you to be the caretaker Kong from now on. And I mean, I almost cried. I mean, it was just like being handed the best thing you could possibly ever imagine, I do believe, you know.
The Smithsonian Institute has tried again and again to get its paws on the armature. And one famous director even offered Bob $500,000 for the piece. But Burns is adamant about keeping Kong in his native homeland of Hollywood. Bob has also been given other Kong-related props over the years, like the head and flipper belonging to the grotto serpent. In the movie, the snake-like Elasmosaurus nearly chokes the life out of Kong. And though this diminutive dino was barely seen in close-up, it was fitted with razor-sharp metal teeth, a testament to the detail O'Brien and Delgado worked into each and every model. Another Kong reptile animated by O'Brien is this fearsome Brontosaurus, which now belongs to former Famous Monsters of Filmland editor, Forey Ackerman. The years have been tough on the 3-foot behemoth. Plastic wrap is all that keeps his decaying foam rubber body from extinction. Bob Burns also acquired this miniature maquette of the Skull Island wall and gate. In the story, a 50-foot-high barrier separates Kong from the natives. And this small-scale model was used as a 3-dimensional guide to help the Kong crew build the life-size set piece. Bob's museum is also where you'll find this leftover fossil, which once belonged to the cave bear caught in a life-and-death struggle with the son of Kong. Like King Kong's head, the bear's skull was first carved from wood before being forged into steel. In 1949, 16 years after Kong toppled from the Empire State Building, another giant ape scaled the box office, mighty Joe Young. Willis O'Brien once again dazzled audiences with spectacular effects. And this time, he had little help from a young animator by the name of Ray Harryhausen, who went on to create classic film fantasies like The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Jason and the Argonauts. Today, just like Kong, Joe makes his home in the Burns Museum.
I'm very fortunate to have one of the Joe Young armatures, the metal armatures. They made 4 of those. And Ray Harryhausen came over one day, and first thing he saw it, and he goes, oh my God, that's Jennifer. And I said, Jennifer, what are you talking about? He said, well, Jennifer, that's the puppet that I used most in Joe Young. That's the one I did the nightclub wrecking scene, the horses roping him and everything. I said, why Jennifer? He said, Jennifer Jones was one of my favorite actresses in the world. And somehow, when I looked at that puppet, it was so beautiful, I called it Jennifer.
Joe and Kong may seem similar, but there are major differences between the two primates. Joe's armature is 3 inches smaller and consists of several sturdier hinge joints in the hips and shoulders. Unlike Kong's steel cranium, Joe's head is made of a wood putty-type substance called bakelite. And because Joe's body is made of aluminum, he's also much lighter than his infamous ancestor. Feast your eyes. These two classic movie characters have never shared the same screen. Until now. Other Joe Young items in Bob's collection include these hard rubber test castings of the miniature horses and lions animated in the film. But when it comes to ape movie artifacts, it's hard to beat this actual Joe Young head, which was stripped right off of the armature and preserved by being soaked in resin. Mr. Young looks as impressive as he did 50 years ago, and everything but his teeth and ears belongs to the original figure. When you're as massive a pop icon as King Kong, it's only a matter of time before you're asked to push a few products. And in 1972, the big gorilla made a full-color appearance in this rarely seen Volkswagen TV commercial.
If you've been looking high and low for a big car as good as a Volkswagen, maybe you should look into our big car, the Volkswagen 411.
Dave Allen, known for animating the Pillsbury Doughboy, had constructed his own replica of Kong, then shot some film tests with the help of Bob Burns.
He made a projected background of New York, and we shot an 18-second test of Kong on the Empire State Building as the planes are going by, and he grabs one, and that's it. Only 18 seconds.
When Volkswagen saw the footage, they realized it was a monster-sized opportunity to promote their latest automobile.
It's a beautiful commercial. It really is a great commercial. And I have that puppet now, which is smaller. It's only about 14 inches, where Kong was 18. But it looks just like Kong. I mean, he did a beautiful job in sculpting it, and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous puppet. It stays in a bell jar that's tinted blue that keeps the ultraviolets out, so he's going to last a long time.
Computerized special effects may have replaced O'Brien's stop-motion animation, but King Kong remains one of the biggest stars to ever emerge from Hollywood. And luckily, a few rare Kong artifacts have endured as long as the classic film itself.
Today, Kong is just as good a movie and strong a movie as it was in 1933. It's got a charm to it, a life to it, a soul to it maybe, what do you want to call it, that hardly any other film has had since.